2024 was a crazy year when it came to pro wrestling. Sure, one day when a historian sits down and writes about this, the main story will be WWE has now entered a new commercial boom. The company really was unstoppable, as Paul Levesque did a magnificent job of identifying how to get things back to the top, and many a lapsed fan actually returned to World Wrestling Entertainment because they could feel deep down in their tum-tums it was good again. Over on the other side of the pond, AEW was still offering an alternative, but it's fair to say they were having a few struggles. This was talked about over and over and over again until everybody just wanted to cry. I mean, they're still pretty damn good. I swear individuals get distracted. The independent circuit was also throwing out Stars of Tomorrow all over the place, and let's not forget that TNA also smashed it. Some of their live events were really good. There's also a huge conversation to be had when it comes to the Japanese scene, and how NJPW never really found their way. That's why we're all keeping our fingers crossed for 2025, even more so because that's going to be Tanahashi's last year. It does mean there's plenty to throw into our brains though, so thank you very much for joining me, my friends. I am Simon Miller, and here's the 25 best wrestling moments of 2024. Number 25, burning down the house. Hangman Adam Page's heel turn in 2023 was a revelation. His acting was a level above virtually everybody else's, especially because he was playing the wrestler who's become unhinged. Usually that can be horrible to watch, but when it comes to the cowboy, he just gets it. He felt like a wronged psychopath. He also had the best facials, because at one point he'd have wild-eyed fury, and then he seemed to be spiritually vacant. And let's not forget everything he did with Swerve Strickland too. That's one of the feuds of the year. I think you do have to say a highlight of their battle too is when Hangman decided to go to Swerve's childhood home that he'd only just recently purchased. And what did he do? He burnt that mother down to the ground. Adam then sat in a chair and drank whiskey as he was very proud of his arson, which yes is a crime, but this is just wrestling done right. Of course it's over the top and somewhat stupid, but the moment just gets you right in the face. It also meant when they got to their big cage match, they had genuine beef to continue brawling, and honestly, while we should make sure they have a little bit of a break, should we get back to this eventually? You bet your ass. Number 24, Jey Uso wins the Intercontinental title. So on the September 23rd episode of Raw, Jey Uso defeated Bron Breakker, and he became the flipping Intercontinental Champion. It was totally unexpected because Bron had only recently secured that thing, but oh my gosh, was it the correct decision. No matter what you think about Jey Uso the wrestler, fans absolutely love him, so for him to get his due, well, I tell you, I was smiling like a Cheshire cat. We also made sure to protect Breakker as well, and actually he came out the other side feeling like a bigger star, because somehow wrestling just works that way. And in terms of the match itself, well, it was WWE done right. It had drama, it had near falls, it had you second guessing, and when we did get to the 1, 2, 3, everybody popped. It was just a wonderful experience. It actually got better in hindsight too, because Bron Breakker would regain this championship a few weeks later. And why did we do that? Because all of this was going to tie into the bloodline stuff, with Jey eventually going, okay, fine, I will help you, Roman Reigns, even though I still think you're a little bit of an emotional manipulator. So I am so pleased that WWE did do this, because sometimes you just have to smell the air and go to yourself, it's the right time to pull the trigger, and it totally was. I'm pretty much in love with Jey Uso at this point, and I want to be his friend. So don't tell him that. It makes me sound like I'm a little bit crazy, but my gosh, is he great. Number 23, the death of Bryan Danielson. So we all kind of felt that at AEW Wrestle Dream, Bryan Danielson was likely going to go into semi-retirement. That was true, but unlike many other wrestler who was walking away, Danielson had decided, I should be killed. That's exactly what happened. Now, this really did split the wrestling community down the middle because some people couldn't believe it, but that's exactly the type of emotion that Danielson was going for. You don't think that Tony Khan wouldn't have let the American Dragon go out however he chose? Of course he did. And because Bryan is a little bit of a wrestling psychopath, he decided to get choked out with a bag as Jon Moxley looked on and laughed, even though that was meant to be his friend. It also meant the last thing we saw of Bryan Danielson in AEW was him struggling to breathe as he got wheeled out of there on a stretcher. Now, I understand I sound like a nut job because I'm saying this was great, but sometimes this is what wrestling needs. It most definitely had an old school feel to it, but not every single narrative can end with peaches and cream. Go read a damn Shakespeare play. Sometimes you need to have tears in your eyes, and Danielson totally understood that. It also feels like it's going to benefit All Elite Wrestling going into 2025, because we had the whole story with the Blackpool Combat Club, Wheeler Yuta, and the babyfaces trying to unite. So do you know what Bryan Danielson did again? He gave back, which was essentially his favorite thing in the world. I mean, you've read the tales. Sometimes he would be told you have to win, Bryan. He'd go like, nah, I want to lose. So he really was one of a kind, and let's also not forget that at All In 2024, he did get his big goodbye. This was the time to be a sad panda. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Number 22, Hell on Earth. CM Punk made some big promises ahead of his Hell in a Cell match with Drew McIntyre. Not only did he say the blood would flow, but his goal was to restore the sleeping giant back to what the gimmick was meant to be. Nobody should want to be in the damn Hell in a Cell. This then brought us to the Bad Blood pay-per-view, or PLE. And do you know what Punk and a blood-drenched Drew McIntyre did? They totally smashed it. If you want to tell me this was the Scottish Warrior's best performance of his career, I'd probably agree with you. And the match was so gory and hateful, you started to wonder, maybe they really do dislike each other. They also made sure there was an atmosphere in there that both were kind of scared, because again, it is the Hell in the Cell, and some of the bumps they did were totally disgusting. Like when Drew fell on Simba the Steel Steps. I mean, as I'm talking to you, we haven't seen him match, and I'm a bit worried that his back is totally dead. There was extra intelligence to this too, because while Punk and Drew did involve weapons, they were always used in the most innovative way possible, which kept you on your tootsie toes, and it kept you second guessing. This really is two premier workers doing their thing. After the fact, there was also all that news that apparently when Punk blasted Drew on top of the head with a toolbox, that was not approved, and all the blood that was coming from McIntyre's head, well, that was damn real. This is going to make me sound absolutely disgusting, and I do apologize, but that meant there was even more emotion here. You couldn't look away, even though your eyes were freaking out. It means now, as we do go into 2025, Punk and Drew have totally achieved this goal, and the next time we do have a Hell in a Cell match, you better be able to live up to this. Don't want any more hoity-toity stuff. I want blood feuds only. This really was one of the best matches of 2024. Number 21, Jeff Jarrett's babyface turn. So Jeff Jarrett has been a total delight in AEW ever since he signed. This has been quite the revelation, because when he did come in, some people rolled their eyes. We don't want to see Double J. Well, they were totally incorrect. Jeff was just able to totally understand what his role was, and he was always trying to get other people over. When we did get to 2024, and we had something very unexpected, all of a sudden Jarrett was a massive babyface. This all kicked off when he entered the Owen Hart Foundation Cup, and in a haunting 9-minute promo, he pledged to win the whole thing on behalf of his fallen brother, and also told all those stories back from 1999. Owen Hart used to be his best friend. It was a totally wonderful, heart-wrenching speech that actually left you going, man, I want Double J to win the thing, even though when you looked at the booking, you knew that wasn't possible. So you were now arguing with your brain. That is a damn good wrestling speech. Jeff even decided to drop Toby Keith's immortal lyric, which was, I ain't as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. And that had some real gut-punching power too. Keith had died earlier that year. That was another one of Double J's friends. Talk about an ingenious combination of character work, and dare I say it, real pathos. Once again though, Jeff Jarrett was only doing this in order to help somebody else, which was Hangman Adam Page. And when all was said and done, even if you didn't want to boo the cowboy, you couldn't help yourself. How dare he do this to a wrestling legend? It means I'm actually excited to see what Jeff Jarrett's going to do in 2025, because he doesn't need to retire yet. Although when he does decide to hang up the boots, do you know who we should copy? The way that Sting went out. If anyone deserves it, it's Double J. Number 20, the in-ring debut of the Wyatt Sicks. The introduction of the Wyatt Sicks to Monday Night Raw was handled brilliantly, to the point even those who think spooky wookie stuff is a bit dumb put their hands up and said, you know what? That was a home run. Now, of course, you had to suspend your disbelief, but that's why wrestling is so good, and the atmospheric setting they were able to create actually made you feel a little bit off. I mean, we cut to the backstage area, and it looked like a bunch of employees had been killed, especially Chad Gable. Cue the memes. Now you have to figure out the whole massacre deal was a wink-wink nod-nod to Bray Wyatt, and it was a very nice tribute. And when eventually Bo Dallas and his crew came out of that magical door, I mean, my gosh, it is one of the best entrances you could ever hope to see, and the crowd went totally crazy for it. Everybody else played their part so damn well too, and Triple H understood the assignment here. While sometimes The Fiend had entered actual magical lands, which didn't really work in a wrestling setting, here, when they weren't fighting, fine. They were kind of supernatural beasts, But when you got in the thing and it was time to scrap, they were just really experienced and aggressive wrestlers. So everybody here, from Bo Dallas to Eric Rowan to Nikki Cross to Dexter Lumis to Joe Gacy to whoever else, deserves all the credit in the world. And because they are used so sparingly, when they do turn up, well, kind of feels like Elvis has come back from the dead. This really could have gone wrong too, because if you do get the presentation incorrect, it comes across like badass theater. But this actually felt like the coming of a new dawn. I've actually gone back to watch it numerous times. So it's just another area that WWE did get right in 2024 and deserves all the praise. That's why I've stuck it in here. I'm actually very excited to see what the Wyatt Sicks do next. Number 19, the Nigel McGuinness return. AEW at its best is surreal. I mean, you could even call it impossibly good. This absolutely ties into the Casino Gauntlet at All in London 2024, because Tony Khan must have sat there and gone, you know what, why don't we just have a bunch of fun and book this like we're on Reddit? The stipulation to the match to begin with is super entertaining and something AEW can build around, and I suppose if you want to make a comparison, it could be their Royal Rumble. I know people don't like me saying that, but it gives me the same kind of vibes. You also kind of do get more of a match when it does settle down, just because of how the foundations work, which means before we even got to this surprise return, Hangman Adam Page was countering Orange Cassidy's orange punch into a seamless deadeye, when Zack Sabre Jr. also got a shock pop, and he started to use the European clutch like it was going out of fashion. It was entrant number 3 that was the most mind-blowing surprise in years and years, though, because one Nigel McGuinness was never meant to return. You can go out there and watch his farewell documentary now, and you will have tears in your seeing devices. But after years and years of being on the sidelines, Nigel realized, you know what, I could make a comeback. And can you believe it? He did it in Wembley Stadium, which was the same venue that got him into wrestling in the first place, thanks to SummerSlam 1992. The pop was one you'd go back and watch all the time because it did make you feel warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum, and he just looked incredible. You would have thought he was wrestling as often as yesterday. There was actually some great narrative here too, because he hated Bryan Danielson, and the winner of the Casino Gauntlet would go on to face the World Heavyweight Champion, who just so happened to be Bryan Danielson. We didn't talk about that part enough. If nothing else, McGuinness deserved a moment like this, given all the hardship he had gone through. So now if he does decide to walk away, I hope he can do it with a calm head and a calm body. He really does deserve more plaudits than he got. The man was ahead of the game. Number 18, that Bronson Reed tsunami. When you finally see a talent get their due and allowed to be moved up to the next level, it just gets you so damn excited. That's how I felt about Bronson Reed in 2024. It was such a 180 from the back end of 2023 when he wasn't really doing much. This is why a lot of fans raised their eyebrows. Before he came back to WWE, he was beating Okada in New Japan, so why the hell don't we tap into that again? Eventually, I think Triple H realized this and saw the moment, so when it was time to write Seth Rollins off TV, we turned to Bronson Reed and said, damn it, Bronson, you're going to go out there, and you're going to hit him with so many tsunamis, some people are going to think that Seth is dead. This worked so well that within seconds, everybody was going, oh my gosh, Bronson Reed has such aura. They also talked about cinema, and talk about maximizing your minutes. Reed would continue to do this to everyone that got in his way when he clashed with Braun Strowman in the last Monster Standing match. I've already said this in another video. I think that's one of the best matches of the year. It's just fun. It also meant that Bronson could continue to tsunami him too, which he did so on a car. And once again, that is the most sports entertainment thing ever, and I'm never gonna get mad at it. Why the hell was he diving into a vehicle? It also was able to go viral on the internet because, of course, people love this stuff. So I suppose you can take any of these tsunamis and call it one of the moments of the year, and I will agree with you. I also think moving into 2025, Bronson Reed should probably get a championship. We watch this space. Number 17, the AEW debut of Kazuchika Okada. So the presentation of Okada ever since he arrived in All Elite Wrestling has once again sent wrestling fans nuts. I can't lie, it's actually my favorite version of the Rainmaker, because he makes me laugh out loud. And I still know that when he gets in the ring, he's one of the best ever. So now I get these two things together. It's like Christmas come early. If nothing else, I think this was a needs-must situation, because while Okada was still at the top of the tree in New Japan, his act had kind of become stale. Just because it's the law of diminishing returns, we'd had it for a decade plus. So we made sure that the Maker of Rain teamed up with his old friend the Young Bucks as we took their EVP gimmick and essentially said they were allowed to walk around doing whatever the hell they want. which was mostly calling people bitches. We also threw Eddie Kingston in there, and he got murked by these three, which for some reason was entertaining, even though we all love Eddie. And just go and see what AEW did with Okada's entrance. As soon as people hear that coin drop, they go absolutely crazy. And while that's not great given that he is meant to be a heel, it also means we all see him like a star. So what exactly has changed? Nothing. He's the best. He's also the Continental Champion, and really we're only just getting started because eventually he will go back to the Tokyo main eventer and he'll put on banger after banger after banger. Then on a random Dynamite, if he does want to do a dance with Mercedes Moné, why the hell not? If anything, it just goes to show he is one of the GOATs, because no matter what you throw at him, he's able to knock it out the park. I think he's my hero. Number 16, Dominic Mysterio turns on Rhea Ripley. Let's not pretend otherwise, and I include myself among you. When you are watching WWE, you don't just want good matches, you want plenty of soap opera, and you want to laugh out loud at the madness. When you break that down, then I think you have to give all the plaudits to everything that Dominic Mysterio and Rhea Ripley did in 2024, because my gosh, what a wonderful treat. I mean, the plotting of the whole thing was fantastic. You could see it coming a mile off too, because as soon as Liv Morgan did return, there were interesting things going on with her and the Dom. But even then, we were also behind Rhea. We kind of hoped she wasn't going to get screwed over. Once again, this is like Shakespeare. It's a wild exaggeration, but I've said it. It also just underlined the fact that the younger Mysterio was a despicable human being, and that Daddy Ray had all the rights to be mad at him. How the hell did that come out of his penis? That's not how giving birth works, but you take my point. It all led to the big match at SummerSlam when Liv Morgan was defending her Women's Championship against Rhea Ripley. And why did Ripley not walk away with the title? Because boyfriend Dominic screwed her over. I mean, if you want to compare this to a modern day Mega Powers exploding, I totally get it. And this just helped everybody. Liv is having her best year, Dom is having her best year, and Rhea Ripley is on the cusp of becoming an even bigger superstar than she already is. And yes, that is ridiculous, but this is the power that she has. You also have to say it was one of the biggest things in WWE for the entire year, because we were just patient with it and we built and built and built. And even when these three do go their separate ways, I hope WWE remembers to keep the momentum going. They all smashed it out of the park and feel like bigger stars because of it. Number 15, Chris Statlander and Willow Nightingale tried to kill each other. Something very important happened across 2024 when it came to AEW. Whatever you thought of the women's division most definitely changed, because that thing leveled up massively. It means there are a bunch of female talents who do deserve their plaudits, from Toni Storm to Mariah May to Nyla Rose to Mercedes Moné to Queen Aminata, but there were two that maybe, just maybe, stood out more than anybody, and that was Willow Nightingale and Chris Statlander. The moment I want to talk about today, though, did go down at All Out 2024 when we blew off their feud with a street fight, and I tell you this. If you enjoyed two human beings absolutely wrecking each other, why the flub have you not watched this? It is totally gruesome and brutal, but also very brilliant. The fact they were able to make such a noise as well on a card that also had Will Osprey versus Pac summed it up. And this non-stop breathless war with just huge spots that said, hey man, why don't you go flub yourself? I'm not dead yet, just gave it an entire sense of defiance. I mean, at one point they introduced thumbtacks, as of course they did their wrestlers. And what did Chris Statlander do? She went for an axe kick and missed, meaning she took a splits in the damn thing. That still makes me feel wibbly wobbly. Willow also proved to be the ultimate babyface, which was essentially her calling card throughout 2024. And while Statlander's heel turn did end very shortly after this, she proved she could play both sides. I'm actually a little disappointed this program did end so early. I would have taken a best of 10, and I'm not kidding, that's how good they were. They also did that thing where you take story and just basic cool shit and marry it together. And once again, I know I've said this a lot, but it absolutely is one of the best matches of the year, and the moment deserves all the chatter you're able to muster. Number 14, Joe Hendry's huge pop. Joe Hendry is an overnight success 10 years in the making. Just go and listen to any of his peers talk about the journey he has been on. That guy has been toiling away for close to a decade, so when he finally got his due, maybe it felt like a surprise to some, but Joe totally earned it. When you actually go through the previous year in 2023, you could see this coming together, because not only did Hendry transform his body and his work, he basically became an all-round professional wrestler, and he was good to go. It meant by the time WWE had struck up a relationship with TNA, if anybody was going to be able to fit into that sports entertainment model, well, it absolutely was Joseph Hendry. The wonderful coincidence was that just before this, Hendry had also made his theme song a worldwide hit, So when he did get the invitation to go to NXT, and he popped up on a Tuesday night without any advertising, well, not only did the performance center go nuts, but the internet lost their minds. He would go on to break social media records all over the place, which is totally unheard of. And every single time he returned to NXT, yep, it happened again, he blew the roof off the place. The moment I think we should talk about the most, though, is when he main evented an NXT pay-per-view along with Ethan Page. Because go back and listen to that reaction too. I suppose the WWE debut pop was the best one, but this was a close second. And I'm going to use my stupid phrase again. It just made me feel warm and fuzzy in my tum-tum, because everybody believed in Joe Hendry. This will probably be surpassed in 2025 when he does turn up at the Royal Rumble, but more power to that guy. Goes to show that you should bet on yourself, and that sometimes you should do things outside of the box. I mean, next year Joe even wants to be in the Eurovision Song Contest. So I don't think we're done by a long shot. Number 13. Oh no, I pressed the wrong button. So this is going to annoy many people, but please remember who your narrator here is. My name is Simon Miller, and I love goofy wrestling for life, which also means I love comedy and wrestling. This is also a very specific moment, so you'll have to forgive me, but it did come on an episode of Dynamite when the Young Bucks were about to take on the Acclaimed. Now, I wouldn't say this feud was anything to write home about, but just as Max Caster motioned that he was now going to perform his signature rap, he wasn't able to because the microphone wasn't working. Now, the commentators sold this great as Taz even had a little chortle to his own before we cut to the back, where Okada had taken ownership of the director's chair and claimed that he had accidentally pressed the wrong button. Now, of course, he had done this on purpose, but by the time he had uttered "I'm so sorry" and dropped the always expected bitch, well, I was totally in, and I remember looking up to the skies and saying to myself, oh my gosh, I've just fallen in love with Okada. I mean, his timing was so spot on, you could even hear the audience crack up, because how could you not? And even if you're not into this character, you have to agree, this was pretty damn good. Once again, if AEW hadn't have made this change, we wouldn't have had this opportunity, so I'm never going to say that it is bad. Also, I have gone back and watched this moment at least 10 times. That makes me a massive nerd, but my gosh, if something does make me laugh, well, I will follow you till the end. Number 12, Jey Uso's Backlash entrance. So the big debate all year long has been whether Jey Uso is a good wrestler or a bad wrestler, and I'm just going to tell you, my friends, I do not care. Also, I think he's a very good wrestler. Sometimes wrestling isn't about wrestling. I swear I've said that once already. And in 2024, that guy has been so over. Why can't we just sit back and go, hell yeah, dude, you go crazy with your arms. And I know his WrestleMania 40 match with Jimmy Uso did not live up to expectations, but he is just a human. But jump forward 1 month when we got to Backlash in France and watch how the fans responded to him. You telling me that's not a WWE superstar? I tell you that it is. I mean, that arena went so crazy, I swear that it shook a little bit thanks to the energy, and he's just so damn cool. I know that makes me sound like a nerd, but I'm just calling it how I do see it. Right now, if I could, I would go out for dinner with Jey Uso and become his best buddy. Let's pretend I didn't say it. The pop was so loud because the audience just wanted to see him, and I tell you, if I ever made it to WWE and somebody told me I could have a 5-star match in front of crickets or people would react to me like this, I would always choose the latter option. He will probably remember this for the rest of his life. I also think that it helped him throughout the rest of the year because even if you didn't know much about wrestling and you were just getting into it, you saw Jey and you pondered, well, I should probably get into this guy because look what he's doing to human beings. So yeah, just to underline it one more time, sometimes what you do in WWE and other promotions is more than just a slam. Whatever that magic is, Jey Uso has got it. Number 11, Darby Allin's balcony dive. So halfway through the year, AEW did do Team All Elite Wrestling versus Team Elite, and it didn't really make much sense. I mean, the Young Bucks tried to take over, then all of a sudden Tony Khan was back on TV, even though they had given him the TK driver. And Christopher Daniels was doing stuff, but he was also ignored. I mean, I appreciate the effort, but yeah, once again, it was a little bit like 2 + 2 = potato. AEW was always going to struggle with this a little bit because the whole Civil War storyline has been done so many times over the years that instantly you are going to get comparisons. I know that's not fair, but wrestling is wrestling at the end of the day, and even if you tiptoe around the same narrative, all of a sudden you get fans going, I feel like I've seen this before. Nobody talks like that. It did give us another anarchy in the arena though, and I always find those matches entertaining, especially because they're so obsessed with music. And the first 5 minutes of this, well, it was like wrestling dopamine. Seeing Matthew and Nicholas Jackson melt down too, because Bryan Danielson did come out to the final countdown, was great as well. That thing cost like $200,000. But the real joy is when Darby Allin decided to steal this moment for himself, and he leapt off the balcony into the Elite just as the final countdown chorus kicked in. It's one of the greatest things I've ever seen in my life. It also allows you to stand up and pump your fist, and let's be honest, as shallow as it sounds, that's all we want from wrestling sometimes, to feel like dude bros, whatever the right term would be. Listen, Darby doesn't seem to care, and all he does try to do is create these moments. So I'm going to say thank you very much, Mr. Allen, because in 2024, you totally ticked that box. Number 10, the best WWE finishing sequence of the year. So ever since Bayley got called up to the main roster from NXT, she has had a very strange journey. The old regime didn't really understand what to do with her hugger character, meaning Bells had to turn heel. But ever since then, she did go on to form Damage Control, and all of that was pretty good. I mean, don't forget, some fans thought Bayley couldn't play the bad guy, and she absolutely could. Eventually, this group did disintegrate though, which led to WrestleMania 40 when we had Bayley taking on Io Sky. And as I have said on many a video, this is an underrated match within 2024, because they both went out there and killed it. You also had the wonderful feeling that every single person in Philadelphia wanted to see Bayley have her WrestleMania moment, mostly because of all the things that just came out of my mouth. I think on this evening too, Sky had decided, I'm going to show everybody how great I am as a professional wrestler, and on the biggest stage of them all, well, my gosh, this just rocked. Everything from the transitions to the reversals to the near falls was just excellent, and when Bayley decided to launch into her comeback, well, dare I say it, it may have been perfect. The whole match flowed with a wonderful pulse underneath it. It also brought us to the best finishing sequence of the year, because I tell you once again, Io smashed Bayley with a barrage of moonsaults, and this Bayley kept on kicking out 1-2-ooh. In a magnificent twist that broke your heart and also spiked its rate through the roof, Io then missed a third, but executed a flawless handspring kip-up out of a rose plant attempt, and all of a sudden you started to think that Bayley was going to lose. I mean, this feigned bump was so close to the real thing, people had to double tape, and honestly, if you go back and watch it now, there actually isn't enough room to create this counter, so how the flub did she do it? Bayley was still able to fire back with a clothesline and hit the rose plant to get the 1-2-3, and finally get her revenge after her friends screwed her over. It was just so damn lovely for long-suffering Bayley fans, because we all knew that she did deserve this. And soon after, she lost that title and once again kind of fell back into the doldrums. So WWE doesn't really get Bayley, but at least we'll always have this. Number 9, Will Osprey eats the bicycle. Will Osprey versus Bryan Danielson was a match so good that you almost regret using over-the-top words for other matches. I mean, we're always going 5 stars, superb, excellent, brilliant. But maybe we should actually save all of those for this. There's also a spot in their war that might capture just how wrestling is meant to be done. I'm going to use that word again because it makes me laugh. Maybe it was perfect. Because as we do know, when wrestling is done in the right way, it is meant to be a dramatic emulation of a combat sport. The strikes are meant to look impactful, even concussive, but the wrestler taking these should then leave the match without a mark. So as we neared the finish of this, Osprey attempted the Oz Cutter, and as you would have figured out, Danielson had this move scouted. He knew that William had already used the handspring corkscrew kick, so was about to escalate his offense. It also meant that he now had a moving target, so the American Dragon struck him in the temple with his running Psycho knee, as William Osprey was basically floating through the air. I tell you this, my friends, I don't think you could have hit this move any sweeter. It just used incredible timing and reflexes and made you think that Danielson had just knocked Will Osprey out, and if that had been the finish, nobody would have cared. The big question coming out of it is how the hell did they do this without Will Osprey getting a black eye? I mean, go rewind it over and over and over again. There is definitely contact here. But that's why these two are some of the best. Number 8, The Rock bloodies Cody Rhodes. The Rock was spectacular as the final boss. The transformation was so tremendous. Who even cares if he's babyface or heel? Every time he turned up at a building, thousands of people lost their darn minds. It all then tied into the craziness with WrestleMania 40 and Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns. And given that one Dwayne Johnson was kind of fighting up screen, he just decided, why not I just become the bad guy? He absolutely bought into this and pulled ideas from his Hollywood Rock character as well as the person he played in the late 90s, and some of the 20-minute supplementary Instagram promos he gave us were laugh out loud funny, mostly because he was swearing like a trooper. That man loves the F word. He also had a new toxic, sinister, menacing side to him. And when we got to that episode of Raw before WrestleMania where he beat the pulp out of Cody Rhodes and left him bleeding in front of his bus, this was good old-fashioned pro wrestling. The word going around again, of course, was cinema, and actually I'll give you that one because it was. And the fact The Rock kept on talking after the cameras had stopped rolling, or dare I say it felt a little bit real. It also allowed this build to feel proper big time, as only WWE and WrestleMania can bring sometimes. And I tell you this, without The Rock, I don't think the WrestleMania 40 we had would have been as successful, so more power to him to coming back and essentially doing the right thing. Number 7, Swerve Strickland proves he's the man. Taken as a complete thing, the 2024 edition of Blood and Guts was basically an AEW Blood and Guts match where people tried to kill each other. The peaks were incredible as ever, but if I was going to call out a highlight, I would say the answer is Swerve Strickland. He not only underscored his credentials as the world champion, but basically let everybody know AEW had a new top guy, and Swerve Strickland was it. Choreography is always seen as a dirty word within pro wrestling, which I do understand, because it kind of conveys a sense of artificiality. I sometimes think it should be used in a more positive light though, because Swerve's fight here was pure choreography, and you know what that did? It made the damn match feel cinematic. I did it again. I mean, you saw this man laugh and no-sell a staple gun attack, and as Strickland talked about in interviews after this, he basically wants to make that weapon his calling card. Remember that Triple H had a sledgehammer, Swerve is going to have the staple gun. I mean, it makes sense. That would be under the ring. I suppose if you want to break it down further, Swerve kind of resembled the lead man in a martial arts film, because no matter what the henchman threw at him, well, he had an answer for it. He also had some of the best facials in the game that allowed him to feel like an action hero, and I think wrestling is badass when we go full theater, and on this night, Swerve Strickland proved he can do it just as good as anybody. If nothing else, he is just so effortlessly cool, which also ties into the Jey Uso thing. You shouldn't throw that out the window. It is so damn important. Number 6, watch out for the shoe. The Toni Storm versus Mariah May feud was a complete success and proved to everybody that if AEW does want to do a 9-month story, well, they absolutely can. If you were to ask most people what they thought the highlight was too, it was when we took this heel turn and drove it into the ground. For Mariah had just defeated Willow Nightingale to win the Owen Hart Foundation Cup, so there was a lot of happiness all around, especially from tireless Toni Storm. Finally, she was pleased for her friend. The match was very good as well, and of course played off what had happened a year earlier, and given that May had now finally found her own success, within a few seconds she decided, well, I don't need you anymore, Toni. So as we've talked about a lot in this list, she tried to kill her. I think this is one of the reasons that it stood out too much, because we got rid of the pro wrestling tease, and instead Mariah just grabbed this shoe, and she bludgeoned Storm so bad, it actually got a little bit uncomfortable. It means you can throw in words like vile, distressing, and maybe even a little bit dangerous, and it also tied into Storm's catchphrase. Turned out she did not watch out for the shoe. You also get that shot as well when Mariah was taking this heel and just smashing it into Toni Storm's wound that was getting worse and worse in her head. So yeah, you probably shouldn't have let your kids watch this. It was most definitely adult entertainment. At the end of the day though, AEW was trying to do a heat angle, and that's what it should look like. It shouldn't be you skipping through a forest feeling good. You should go to sleep that night pondering to yourself, what the hell have I just seen? Plus they went and paid it off at All In. This was really good stuff. Number 5, Sami Zayn is against all the odds. Sami Zayn is probably one of the best all-round professional wrestlers ever. Some people don't like to admit that, but he has been able to pull out masterpieces no matter what you give him, including that jackass match at WrestleMania. We need to sing his name more. It was totally different a few years later when we got to WrestleMania 40, because Sami Zayn decided he was going to go after the Intercontinental Championship. And the problem was he was facing Gunther, who had held that title for 666 days. The only way Sam was going to win then was tying into his past, which brought us one very specific word and one very specific move, the Brain Buster. So of course this would tie into his time as El Generico, allegedly, we're never going to know for sure. But when Sami actually busted this out in a WWE ring on Gunther of all people, if you were a fan of the Indies back in the 2000 era, you probably lost your damn mind. The timing and choice of the maneuver was also ideal because it acted as the eureka moment when all of a sudden we also started to think, my gosh, Sami Zayn is going to win. Maybe he's going to slay the ring general and put an end to his record Intercontinental title run. That is totally unthinkable and surreal to see on the main stage, and that's why it became an incredible moment. If you walked up to me right now and you said, Simon, do you think that is Sami Zayn's best WWE match? That would scratch my bald head, but eventually we would go, you know what? I think it damn well was. Number 4, the debut of Jacob Fatu. So there is a constant argument when a brand new person does debut in WWE. How strong should we push them? Now, as far as I'm concerned, you should just go all in and see what happens, but apparently on occasion they have to pay their dues. That was not the case with Jacob Fatu, because the powers that be had decided we gotta turn him into the next top heel. So when Solo Sikoa was getting whooped by Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton, and Kevin Owens and finally seemed like he was gonna get his, Fatu did turn up in a WWE ring, and my gosh, he murdered these guys. I mean, Owens tried to super kick him, but Fatu basically ignored that and turned him inside out with a frightening lariat. And it was the same for Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes. It didn't matter what they threw at this guy, he just took it all in his stride, and he left them laying on the floor. It meant that even though we did have Solo Sikoa, Tonga Loa, and Tama Tonga in the new bloodline, we were left with a very specific message. If you want to keep an eye on anybody, it's got to be Jacob Fatu. The unhinged nature of all of this even told audience members who weren't aware of Jacob Fatu that maybe they should change that instantly. And within about a week, everyone had decided if he wants to headline WrestleMania one day, I'm going to be totally fine with it. It all comes down to the fact you don't wrestle with Jacob, you get trapped in the ring with him and try and survive. That's hyperbole, but I think it sounded cool. So fair play to WWE and Fatu, who have just done a phenomenal job. Maybe we remember this the next time we want to bring somebody in as a force. Just keep it simple, man. This was absolutely excellent. Number 3, Sting's last stand. So what AEW did with Sting from day one was absolutely perfect. Be it the way he moved or the fact he was under the paint meant he never actually came across like a 60-year-old guy. And any time he walked onto a Dynamite Collision or a Rampage, it just felt like he was going to control the situation and go and whip somebody's ass. He was the dominant force that watched over the promotion. This was heightened too because for some reason Sting decided he had no problem doing balcony dives, and we made sure to get those no-selling sequences in there too. People have been moaning about those since the WCW days, but not this bald a-hole. It makes me pop every time. Originally, Tony Khan wanted the Icon to retire at All In, but Sting didn't think he could go that long. So when we got to Revolution 2024, the whole show was situated around the retirement of Sting. He was always going to team with fake stun Darby Allin, but here they were also defending the tag team titles against the Young Bucks. And the way this played out, I mean, you remember everything with the glass, because not only did Darby try to kill himself, but Sting smashed through this too. Then all of a sudden we panicked. Is Sting actually going to lose his final bout? The answer was actually no. Because once again, he just rose from the ashes and pounded on his chest to let us know that he was going to continue. And by the time that he had won via Scorpion Deathlock tap out, I tell you, the happiness and satisfaction I felt, I'm not sure any promotion could have done this any better. It was also deserving of Sting, who had had a Hall of Fame career and sometimes not been appreciated for that. But now, even if he never steps back into another squared circle, we can have this for life. And I'll tell you this for free. As far as I'm concerned, Sting is one of the best of all time, and AEW allowed you to remember that on just one final occasion. Number 2, Cody Rhodes finishes the story. So I will say now this is interchangeable with number 1, but let's just go back to WrestleMania 40, when Cody Rhodes proved that every now and then, you should most definitely bet on yourself. This all peaked during the WrestleMania 40 main event when Cody did take on Roman Reigns for the super duper WWE title. And to start, let's remember what happened in the second half of that match. Because for some reason, WWE decided, why doesn't every single superstar that's ever existed interfere here? And it was one of the most enjoyable rides I'd ever been on. This is what WWE should be. Just take the madness and go crazy with it. Fans also love the fact they were able to see The Rock, The Undertaker, and John Cena, as well as a Seth Rollins wearing Shield gear. But do not forget about the first half of this scrap either. Roman and Cody totally understood what the WrestleMania 40 main event needed, and this felt like the biggest thing of all time. Given what had happened at WrestleMania 39 too, fans weren't 100% sure that we were going to pull the trigger here, so all of a sudden these near falls felt like bullets. What if we don't let the American Nightmare win? What the hell are we going to do then? So it just came down to the biggest good guy taking on the biggest bad guy, which is how Mania should always be. And when Cody did hit the 71st crossroads and he got the 1, 2, 3, just go and look at every single person's face in this venue. I don't think they could have been happier. Once again, that's the point of WrestleMania. You're meant to go home happy. It also put an end to the 1,316-day reign that Roman had gone on, so that was massive too. If you were trying to figure out where Cody sat in the WWE hierarchy, Well, now you knew he was right at the top, and he was going to be damn successful at it. Almost fitting this did happen on the 40th birthday of WrestleMania. It truly was a moment to be savored. Number 1, Bryan Danielson is champion. So the best part about this is that Bryan Danielson didn't want to do it. You know that guy, he's always thinking about everybody else. But it was pitched to him that he should defeat Swerve Strickland for the AEW World title at All In 2024. I assume he went, why doesn't somebody kill me instead? We were going to do that just 2 months later. And when all of a sudden we knew that Danielson was on his last legs, he was going to go into semi-retirement, everybody wanted him to have his one big last moment. And you know where we did it? In front of 55,000 people at Wembley Stadium. Which just so happened to be a decade after he'd done the same at WrestleMania 30. You also got to watch arguably the best wrestler of all time fire up and kick the shit out of Swerve Strickland, who was the most wonderful opponent during this thing. And by the time he had hit the big knee and got the 1, 2, 3, he even went and celebrated with his family. Watching his kids run around the ring like it was the greatest thing ever, well, I had water coming out of my seeing devices. Once again, here comes that word. It was damn near perfect. It also meant it was totally crazy when 1 month later Jon Moxley was choking him with a bag, but we've talked about that. But this is one of the reasons Danielson is so good. He sees professional wrestling in a very specific way, and he always wants to give back to the show and the fans first. That's rare. Even though it shouldn't be. If you are able to watch that main event at All In, though, and not even crack a smile, I think you may be dead inside. And let's face it, as I am talking to you, we don't know when we are going to see Bryan again. So thank goodness he got to have this before he did go away. It was pro wrestling at its best, and I think it was damn well beautiful. A lot of people in his position have not been able to have this fare thee well, so I'm glad that he did get it. Because once again, to use an old cliche, he totally deserved it. Now, there is going to be plenty of moments I haven't mentioned just because I have run out of time, so please do drop me a comment below and give them their due. Before you like the video, share the video, and subscribe. You can then click the video on the screen to continue on your end of 2024 journey, but mostly, my friends, thank you very much for listening to me today, and I will talk to you again very soon.